Hello to the DIS community. My name is Patrizia Paci and I am a researcher at the Animal Computer Interaction Lab at the Open University. This presentation summarizes key information that you can find on the paper Understanding the Interaction Between Animals and Wearables, the wearer experience of cats. The wearable industry offers a variety of animal-attached tags for pet carers who wish to monitor activities and location of their cats and dogs. These include devices that are originally designed to be worn by humans, but that are prompt to suitable also for pets, and tags that are specifically designed to be worn by animals. Animal-attached tags are used by people who actively interact with the system's interface, but are worn by animals who bear them on their bodies. We argue that human users and animal wearers are two different kinds of interactors who should equally inform the design of pet trackers with their requirements, in order to design devices that deliver a good user experience as well as a good wearer experience. Product reviews report that important features to consider when purchasing animal-attached tags are tracking range, accuracy, heads-on sensors, waterproofing, durability, inbuilt or existing collar attachment, size, and weight. This consideration primarily reflects the need of human users to obtain reliable and useful data from hard-wearing devices that are suitable for the outdoor life of animals, while also reassuring carers that tags are not too heavy to be worn. Animal welfare is certainly important for pet carers. Therefore, they are reassured that tags are animal-friendly, attributing comfortable and ergonomic features to the tags. However, the question is how animal comfortability is established. From information available, it really seems that the design of comfortability aspects is still up to what we as humans imagine may be comfortable for an animal. We therefore wanted to investigate the wearer experience of animals with animals to see to what extent the attributes comfortable for pets and ergonomically designed and more generally pet-friendly are based on the actual experience of animals, and then make use of what we learned to elicit wearability requirements and design tags that are comfortable from an animal's perspective. Our investigation was supported by evidence in the animal biotelemetry literature, which shows that tags may cause behavioral and physical impacts that impinge on the animal's life and welfare. In fact, negative impacts have been described. For example, device components and attachments may snag in vegetation, meddling with pastures, rub and abrade skin and fur, disrupt individual or social behavior such as grooming, and so on. Thus, it is important that potential impacts produced by the wearer's physical interaction with the worn device are minimized. As a CR researcher, our aim is to support the design of technologies that enable a positive or at least a no detrimental experience to animals. But how can this wearer experience be assessed and improved? We propose that the design for good wearability leads to a reduction of the effects of tagging, thus improving the bodily experience of animal wearers. Hence, we propose to address the problem of tag impacts through a wearer-centered design. Wearability has been defined as the sensory and corporal interaction between the human body and the wearable device. Hence, designing for wearability means to shape the wearable in accordance with the body form. We argue that such perspective is relevant when designing wearables for animals, and by default, wearability should be accounted for throughout the design process, as it is for human wearables. On these premises, we argue that to afford good wearability, the design of animal wearables should primarily reflect the animal wearer's needs as determined by their characteristics, activities, and living environments. However, this does not appear to be the case, even for devices that are marketed as animal-friendly and whose function is to help human guardians caring for the welfare of their animals. Thus, there is still a need for adequately representing the requirement of animal stakeholders for enabling the development of tags that are centered on the animal wearer's needs and for systematizing such a prospective wearer-centered design. We addressed these issues by conducting an observational study on 13 domestic cats to investigate their reactions to two popular off-the-shelf GPS devices. The tags that we evaluated were PawTrax and Tractive. The aim was to firstly identify potential discomfort generated by the devices, and secondly, to establish animal-informed wearability requirements through systematic observations of the cat's behavioral responses to the tags. We selected and measured the 3 behaviors among those performed by cats. They were grooming, scratching, and head-body shaking. These behaviors were chosen because they can be triggered by external stimuli, like the presence of foreign bodies or irritating factors on the fur or body of a cat. For example, if fleas bite on a spot of the body, a cat usually scratches that spot in response. So we assume that in the same way, if a device irritates the cat's skin, the cat will scratch in response. Moreover, these 3 behaviors are also known to be indicators of stress in cats. Firstly, we measure the frequency and duration of the 3 behaviors during 3 different experimental conditions. That is, the cats without wearing anything, wearing the paw tracks device, and wearing the tractive device. Cats were monitored for 3 non-consecutive days, each day with a different experimental condition. Secondly, we kept our observations open to any reaction directed towards the devices, such as biting, cuffing, or licking the case. And we also annotated contextual and species-specific factors linked to the presence of the device. For example, interaction with other animals of the household and rubbing behavior that could be disrupted by the tag. These are the quantitative findings for the frequencies of grooming, scratching, and head-body shaking. Grooming resulted as a behavior difficult to measure reliably and difficult to interpret as device-induced. The statistical analysis confirmed unknown significance, and so we discarded it as an indicator of discomfort. On the contrary, the body shaking increased significantly across the 3 conditions. This shows that the behavior could be used as an indicator of discomfort in cats. And in particular, the significance was found between control and paw tracks and control and tractive. For scratching, the difference across condition was not statistically significant. However, cats performed the behavior in a way that was difficult not to attribute to discomfort. Hence, we analyzed it further using qualitative methods because there were interesting behavioral patterns that could serve for a requirement analysis. For example, in scratching, various cats repeatedly scratched one side of the neck and immediately after the other side when wearing paw tracks. If we look at the paw tracks in the bottom picture, we can see 2 eyelets in the inner surface of the case. When the device is worn, these 2 eyelets are in contact with the cat's neck. We think that these eyelets might generate a stimulus or exert some pressure because various cats scratched one side of the neck and then the other side, very near to the edges of the case, and they did so only with paw tracks. And interestingly, the clip that attaches the tractive case to the collar has a smooth surface, and in fact, with tractive, cats did not scratch the neck on alternative sides. This reinforces our hypothesis that the eyelets of the paw tracks may be involved in the scratching impulse. These are other relevant reactions and factors that we found through the qualitative analysis of cats' behavior. For example, some cats were able to lick, bite, and in some cases even cuff the case of the tractive device. This is clear evidence that the protrusion of tractive was too conspicuous. On the other hand, the paw tracks case, which is less protruding than the tractives, was never licked, bitten, or cuffed by any cat. Our observation and the related quantitative and qualitative analysis of cat behavior allowed us to systematically find flaws in the design of the devices and suggest implication as to which elements could be redesigned to improve the wearability of these and other devices. For example, the protrusion of the device should be kept at a minimum, discontinuity in the inner surface of the collar and case, such as, for example, eyelets, should be avoided, hard material should not be used to encapsulate electronic, and so on. In conclusion, there is an imbalance existing between user and wearer requirements when the wearers are non-human animals. To help redress this imbalance and design wearables that are truly animal-friendly, a conscious effort should be made to give animals proper consideration as primary stakeholders of the devices they wear. With our study, we propose to do so through a data-driven approach that showed how systematic observation of animals' experiences with wearables can be undertaken to investigate species-specific discomfort and identify animal-centered requirements useful to improve the animal friendliness of tags.